He's the Executive Vice President and General Manager. Nick Caserio joining us right now, live fieldside. Nick, good morning. It's camp.
Morning, fellas. Great to see you.
All right, here we are. We're back, and we were just talking about various elements of practice. How hard is it for you to not get hung up on one or two plays or a trend here and a trend there and just take the whole thing as it comes?
No, that's the most important thing. So, I mean, the way the league is set up, especially these first 3 or 4 practices, there's a certain acclimation period that everybody kind of goes through. So the practices are structured a certain way. We understand the reps are going to be a little bit limited. Then we'll have an off day on Sunday, and I would say essentially training camp will really start on Monday when we put the pads on, when you start to see some of the physical elements come into play. So you really have to break training camp up into some blocks, kind of that first 2 week period before the first preseason game. Then that first preseason game will be an opportunity for some players probably to play a little bit more than others. It's the way it works around the league. And then the way we're structured this year, excuse me, we're going to have a few joint practices with some other teams. That's another evaluation tool. So really what you try to do is over the next 4 to 6 weeks, kind of get a good evaluation, make sure you're not seeing anything different than you thought you were going to see, and then try to make the decisions that you feel are in the best interest of the team, understanding we're going to keep 53 on the roster. We're going to have another 16 or so players on the practice squad, and we've talked about this multiple times on this show. We kind of operate as if we have 70 players available on a weekly basis. So it's just about making sure that as best we can, keep the right 70 on campus, understanding we're going to lose some players. We have to expose them to waivers. But that's just part of the process. But don't get too caught up, and anybody can go out there and make one play on one day. Really what we're looking for is the consistency of performance over the course of time, because that's what you're going to have to sustain over the course of the season.
You've always reminded us, we've tried to remind fans, roster construction is 24/7, 365. It's not like there's a free agent period in March and it stops. And I bring it up because we go to the offseason, everybody goes to the break. You signed 2 corners, Damon Arnett, Arthur Mollett. What can you tell us about those 2 acquisitions, Nick?
Yeah, I mean, different players have a certain level of experience. I'd say starting with Arthur. Arthur was a player that we had worked out in the spring. So, and then as we went through to get ready for training camp, we felt we were probably going to need another corner or 2 just from a numbers and a competition standpoint. But Arthur's found a way to stick around this league for a number of years. Wasn't drafted, and he's played in a number of different systems, has some flexibility inside the formation, outside the formation. Has a certain level of toughness and playing style, plays physical for his size. So we thought that was a player that potentially could add a little bit more depth to that room. And I would say in Damon's case, Damon's history is pretty well chronicled. I would say obviously the first part of his career didn't go very well for a myriad of reasons. And then there was a gap there, and then he played in the UFL in the spring. And actually that transaction, you were limited in terms of when you can actually sign those players. You had to wait until a certain date to be able to consummate that. Okay. But similar to Arthur, different. We didn't work him out the same day, but we had worked Arthur out at some point in June, Damon out in June, and then we kind of kept tabs, and then at some point we made a decision after a pretty thorough vetting process. Look, there's potentially a little bit of risk involved here, but for where we were, we felt comfortable giving the opportunity. We'll see how it goes. I mean, nobody's guaranteed anything, but those 2 players have a certain level of experience, and we'll see how they compete relative to the rest of the group.
Nick, as camp opens, we get that PUP list and NFI, and we quickly reminded the fans that this PUP is not the PUP that's going to take place Labor Day. But what can you tell the fans about how that works, how you make those decisions? Because guys can come off very quickly, right?
Absolutely. So when training camp, when they report, everybody goes through a physical process, and they've either met the requirements where they're physically ready to play and be able to go out there and practice and be able to kind of perform their job. Say some players are at different stages. Some players may need 3 or 4 days. Some players may need a week or 2. Some players may need a little bit longer. So you just try to gauge the information, and that's why they're categorized as active PUP, active NFI. In the season, once a regular season starts, when you cut the team, that player is either off of active PUP and on your roster, or he stays on reserve PUP or reserve NFI, and then similar to the IR designate for return, you have 4 weeks before that player is eligible. So a lot of it is just based on when are they going to be ready to be able to go out there and perform and do their job. But it's very fluid. The guy could be on there for a day and then come off. A guy could be on there for 2 days and then come off. So we'll monitor that on a regular basis. We talk as a staff about whether a player is ready or not, and then when the player is ready, then we'll put him on a practice field. Doesn't mean he's going to be able to do everything, but we might have to ease him in. So training camp, every team goes through this. There's varying levels of timing, but you have a little bit of flexibility in training camp when they report.
Nick, one of the things that stood out was the number of running backs that are on PUP NFI, which going back to the end of the mini camp, you signed Nick Chubb, and now you look up and go, wow, okay, Nick's one of the guys that's got experience in that room. Woody's a rookie. Jawar was on practice squad last year. You got Dare, and you got Nick. What can you tell us about Nick, what he's meant since you signed him, and what do you think you've got in him?
Yeah, we signed him. It was around for the last day or two before we kind of broke for the summer. But, Nick's a very experienced player. He's been a very productive player. He's had some injuries that he's had to deal with over the course of his career. When he's been healthy and been available, he's been as productive as any back in the league. So smart, instinctive, tough. He's got a good playing style. Great demeanor, great makeup, very professional, works very hard. So has some work to do just relative to our system because, like I said, he was only here for a day or two. So, we'll see where he is in training camp and the progress that he makes.
Nick, offensively, we saw the offseason practices. Now it's training camp with Nick Cayley coordinating the offense. What is the process? How does all that work as you install new plays and a new system and build up toward the start of the regular season?
Yeah, for sure. Honestly, this is kind of our second time through the installation. So when we started OTAs or whenever we phase 3 or whatever we want, we put the offense in, went through it in the spring, practiced a little bit, and then we have a little bit of a break. So now we're going to go back and you reinstall actually what you did in the spring. So you probably got 85-90% of the offense in the spring. So now we'll go through it in training camp here, probably a little bit quicker pace. You just have more time on the field. So it's really the second or third opportunity for some players to go out there. And really what you're trying to do is just build reps and be comfortable with the calls, with the formationing, with the concepts. And then we'll tweak some things as we go, but we'll put the base of the offense, offensively and defensively, the foundation, and kicking game as well, the foundation of what we're going to do during the season will be put in place here. We'll practice some things maybe a little bit more than others, and then we get to the regular season, then the game plan will be put together based on who the opponent is and what we feel like we have to do that week.
Nick, listen, yesterday to your presser, I heard you say the word competition, that's what you wanted training camp to be, about competition, whether it's on the O-line where it's obvious. Guys are trying different positions out. You're, okay, what about this move? Let's put these guys here. There are different combinations you're trying to come up with, but even for guys that have been around for a while, establishing that competition. Can you speak to how important that is for this camp, for this team, to maintain a high level of competition?
Sure. We feel like we have a number of good players in the building, so when we practice against one another, it's good competition amongst one another, and you're helping your teammate hopefully improve or get better and work on something that is potentially going to help him against an opponent. So we're all teammates here, but by the same token, we're still going to push one another. Defensive line is going to push the offensive line and vice versa. Corners and the receivers are going to work against one another, but they're going to work with each other. So we got a pretty good group, pretty professional group that understands of working in concert with one another, but also not being afraid to challenge one another. And if there's something that they can articulate to one another, hey, here's what I see, maybe try this. That's how players learn from each other more than anything else. So we feel like we have the ability to do that, and D'Amico's talked about this. He's talked about it with you all. He talks about it with the team. We really believe iron sharpens iron. So, and then every player has a responsibility to come out here and perform to the best of their ability so that you're helping the other guy on the other side of the ball.
I have a point in my Harris Hits that happened during special teams. You definitely want to go read it.
Self-promotion.
Self-promotion, absolutely.
You want to promote those blue pants you were wearing the other
day
as well? Those are very nice.
Those were nice.
I would wear those.
I got those for $20 at the outlets. They're nice. You might wear those.
I would.
My size is a little bit bigger because I eat different than you. But there's a point in there that I want people to read because it happened during special teams. While everybody else is on their phones, I'm sitting there watching, and I'm watching exactly what you said. I'm watching guys helping guys. Two guys, one guy we mentioned, Damon Arnett and Tremont Smith, that are going to be competing at some point, and yet there they are in a gunner drill, and Tremont's helping Damon with a technique that, Damon was trying to figure out. Tremont stepped to the front of the line and said, hey, watch what I do. Watch how I do this. I got this. And Damon followed right after him, and I think that's the point you're making right there.
Yeah, that's emblematic of what our players are about. We have a lot of professional, a lot of selfless players that they're focused on their job, but if there's an opportunity to help one another, and say in Damon's case, he's late to our team, so if somebody can help him get up to speed, then that's our responsibility to each other. Right. So it's about investing in people. It's about investing in your teammates, and we've talked about this on Sundays. those are the people you have to rely on. They can't necessarily hear what D'Amico is saying. They can't hear what a coach is yelling from the sidelines. You got 70,000 people in the stadium, so you're going to look to your left, you're going to look to your right, you're going to look in front, and you're relying on your teammate because that's what the game is about.
Well, one of those guys is Will Anderson Jr. He just walked by, and Nick, he's one of those guys. He's got a game face on when he walks out of the practice field. When you're evaluating players, that's got to be a big part of it. How do they prepare? How do they practice? Because that determines how you play in the game, right?
Absolutely. I mean, that's something, and we'll start the fall scouting process, and you alluded to it. Our college scouts are here for the first 4 or 5 days, and then when they're done here, they're going to start to go watch practices. So they're going to start to evaluate players for the 26th draft. But how they practice, their attitude, their mindset, what's their level of work, what's their commitment to work, we're absolutely focused on that because this league is about work, it's about effort, and it's about toughness. So practice execution becomes game reality. So if you don't do it on the practice field, it's probably not going to carry over to the field on Sundays. So your thought process, your mindset, you have to be very purposeful what you're trying to get accomplished. And I would say nobody embodies that more than Will. And Will's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. But when he's on the football field, he wants to rip your heart out. So there's a balance there. But that's what makes the really good players really good because they have the requisite physical ability. And then you combine that with a mindset, and that's how they become, good players or really good players amongst the league of good players.
I'm contractually obligated to ask you about the draft and or rookies.
I already got ahead of it, see?
I know. I mean, I'm trying to stay ahead, too. I'm getting my work done. But the rookies, when they get in training camp, it's the first time. Now they went through, and you got a chance to see them up close when you got them in minicamp at OTAs. But now they're in training camp. It's a whole different animal. What is it that you want to see from them, Nick, on a daily basis?
It's really about consistency and establishing a routine that works for you. So everybody has something that is going to work for them. Don't make it bigger than what it really is. So the spring, you're kind of small doses, kind of get up to speed. Now training camp, and we're not holding anybody's hand anymore. So there's going to be some ups and downs. You're going to have some good days. You're going to have some bad days. Can you just push through? And then can you stay consistent with everything that you're doing, with your habits off the field, your preparation, your nutrition, your sleep, your recovery? Those are the things that sometimes get lost. Yeah. But the quicker that you can figure out what works for you, the better. So this practice is hard. We're going to practice in 95 degrees. It's going to be hot. So how do you handle that? Are you prepared for it? Are you doing the things that are required? Because you still want to be able to go out there and make sure you're mentally and physically prepared for what you have to do on the field. So overall, that group's a pretty mature group. They've had a good mindset, pretty good work ethic. So don't do anything different, but just try to get yourself into consistent routine over the course of the next however many weeks.
All right, training camp has evolved because I remember it seemed like just a few years ago when you really couldn't start camp until about 2 weeks before your first preseason game. Now it seems like we have a few extra days, but this is a far cry from when you entered the league. What was camp like with the two-a-days when you first got into the NFL?
You practice in the morning, you take a break, and then you come back in the evening, have another workout or practice. I mean, in pads. So, I mean, there was more volume, there was more intensity, it was a little bit longer day. I think the league has done a pretty good job. We've modified some things. You're just trying to make sure that you're doing what's in the best interest of the players. So we're not going to complain about it. Whatever the rules are, we'll figure out a way to maximize our opportunities, take advantage of time in the evening, walkthroughs, whatever it is. Even during a walkthrough, D'Amico talks to the team about that. Like, your effort and focus shouldn't be any different in a walkthrough than it is on the practice field in the morning. So the more we do that, everybody has X number of hours, so who's utilizing those hours to the best of your ability? Like, that's the competitive advantage that we're trying to gain over the rest of the league.
So in 2017, when you were a member of a different organization, you met with us at the Greenbrier. You practiced there for a few days. We realized it was about 75 degrees when the day kicked off. How much did that come into your mind as and you, D'Amico, were deciding what you wanted to do with training camp to get out of the heat and get to a place where you'd been before, you'd seen it, you kind of knew what it was about, you knew what the weather was about, what you can gather from the players for a full practice as opposed to survival for the last 10 minutes here? What are your thoughts about going to the Greenbrier again?
It's all those factors, John, that you mentioned. So it's not too dissimilar with kind of what we did last year. So the way it worked out, we played the Hall of Fame game, we stayed up in Cleveland, and then we buttressed that because we had the road game against Pittsburgh. So anytime you go away for something, it's really a good opportunity for the team just to focus on the team. You have distractions here when you're home, but you have less distractions where all the focus is just it's the team, it's the coaches, it's the players. We have each other, and to get in a different environment. And I would say the Greenbrier, the logistics there really work. They've done a great job. It's a great facility, 2 good practice fields. We always enjoyed our opportunity to go up there and practice against different teams. We did it multiple times, like you mentioned.
Yep.
So we're looking forward to it. Sometimes a little bit of a change of scenery is just good for the team, kind of breaks up the monotony of camp. So between Greenbrier, then the preseason game, then they come home, practice against Carolina, and then go to Detroit, practice against Detroit. You're just trying to, as best you can, assimilate and simulate what's going to happen during the regular season. So, we'll take advantage of our time here in Houston over the next however many days, and then once we transition to Greenbrier, try to take advantage of that as well.
Do the joint practices affect how often or how long people play in these preseason games, how many snaps they get?
It's case by case. Each team kind of does a little bit differently. I think the trend that you've seen is you get your work, whatever group you identify, they get the majority of the work in the practices, and maybe you handle the game a little bit differently. So it's just how do you want to balance practice versus the game? What's the goal? What are you trying to accomplish? So there's a number of things that go into that calculus, and we'll figure out what works and what makes the most sense for us.
Okay, so the other show that you like to go on Sean and Seth in the morning. Like that's like your beach residence. This is like your primary residence.
Yeah, we're on every week. So
Yeah,
it's a little bit
exactly.
different. So.
Exactly. But I heard Sean mention that you started striking up a conversation with Triple H at Sloan.
That actually did happen.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I know you're a big wrestling fan. So how was that?
It was awesome. It was, and I think sometimes wrestling it's a great sport. It's great entertainment, but as a business, they've done and operated as well as anybody when you look across the landscape. So I happened to be on a panel a little bit later in the afternoon, so I was there a little bit earlier. So it was Triple H and one of the Netflix executives. They were talking about kind of the transition from USA or wherever it was to Netflix and Raw, and just the thought process and what goes into it. It was really interesting. And then I said, I got to go back there and meet Triple H. So I mean, he was probably wondering what the hell I was doing back there. Like, who is this guy? But I am a big fan of wrestling, so unabashed. I'm not going to hide it and pretend that I'm not interested. So Sean and I get a kick out of it. But going back to from a business standpoint, there is good a business and successful a business as there is out there.
As Seth would say, it's not fake, it's scripted. But I'm blown away how many intelligent people, really intelligent people, love it. Explain the appeal, just quickly.
It's entertainment.
Okay.
It's different, but football is entertainment. We're all in the entertainment business in some capacity. So there's a certain level of skill and talent that's required. You see personalities of people and the ability to speak to the crowd, how they are on the mic, how they present, how they perpetuate the story. It's interesting. So we understand what it is, but there's still an appeal because it's the longest running, one of the most successful over the course of however many years. If you're not successful, you're not good at what you do, then you probably would have gone away. But they've kind of found a way to continually evolve. There's a mass appeal. One of the things that actually they mentioned at Sloan was how much interest there is from the females in the women population, probably more than people. I want to say it was like 45, 50%. Wow. So you wouldn't think, well, what do women want interested in wrestling? Right. So it's entertaining. It's fun. It creates a little bit of enjoyment. It's a good diversion. So we've got some friends. Jerry Shaplinski and I we kind of go back and forth because Jerry's a wrestling fan as well. So it's fun. It's enjoyable. It's a good outlet, honestly.
When you mentioned business, it made me think of this. And then I saw a couple of guys go by, and there's one of them you gave a contract to last year. And I know you would say he earned it, and that was Nico Collins. Guys got contracts this offseason, and you kind of got ahead of the curve, especially on Sting. That came, I think, right after the Combine. What was it about those particular players that you wanted to make sure we got to keep these guys and keep them as Texans for a while?
Yeah, we've always operated. We're open-minded. We're flexible. And if we think it's the right thing for the organization and the right thing for the players, try to figure out a solution. We're very solutions-minded here. And when you have a player in the building for 3 years, you hopefully have a pretty good idea of what you have with that player. And, if you feel comfortable making that decision, the market's the market. So part of our job is understand the market. What do we think some of the trends are? What do we think is going to happen? And then when you get to the actual negotiation, I think I've got a pretty good working relationship with most agents. Yep. So we're always open-minded. We're always willing to do deals if it makes sense, both economically, and it's the right thing to do by the player. Then we're going to try to do the right thing, and that's in everybody's best interest. So to be able to reward players for the performance. I mean, they've put a lot of time and energy and effort into it, and they've earned those opportunities, to your point, John. So if we can come to a solution that works, great. If it doesn't work out, maybe it's at a later point. So we're just going to try to do business as we see fit, understand the larger landscape of the league, but in the end, focus on the Houston Texans and what's best for us.
All right, I've got one more for you, and I've asked you something similar before, but what's the state of the art here for staying hydrated or staying sane in the hot weather for not just the players, Nick, or for us, but anybody playing golf or anybody has to be outside this time of year? What do you think?
No, coaches as well. So, I mean, your sleep is important, your hydration with liquid IV. We've got more research. Our nutrition staff, Ladd Harris and his staff, do an unbelievable job, as good as any in the league. So we have enough resources that are available. And going back to what we talked about earlier, you just have to establish a routine for yourself that works. You got to make sure that your intake is consistent. There's a recovery period that's involved. We have a number of coaches that like to work out, so sound mind, sound body, all that kind of fits together. So you got to take the necessary measures to keep yourself as best you can cool under the circumstances, which we know what the environment is, and we'll handle it. And it's just about having a plan and being able to go out there and execute the plan as best you can.
Outstanding, Nick. Thanks a lot for joining us.
Thanks, fellas. Great to see you.